we're holding. We didn't finish Parshas Balak last week, so with Hashem's help, we are going to complete the Parsha of Balak today in today's lesson. So let us just go to the seventh Aliyah, the final chapter of Parshas Balak. It's very interesting. We've been learning that Bilam has been trying to curse the Jewish people unsuccessfully, and he keeps on blessing them instead of giving them a curse. Today's Chumash, we will see the end of that story, which he actually succeeds in getting the Jews to sin. It's a sad story, very interesting story. But let us first go with actually some beautiful. It starts off giving beautiful beautiful blessings about the coming of Mashiach, and when he leaves, he goes back to his place. He gives King Balak advice on how to make the Jews sin and then get punished, and you'll see all that in today's Chumash. And now, before Bilam's about to leave, after blessing the Jew, trying to curse them 3 times, and each time it's turning into a blessing. He says, and now, I'm going to my people. And Rashi says, I am like my people, meaning I lost my power. Hashem's presence and great, tremendous prophecy that God has given Bilam went away from him. However, and also I will give you advice what to do. I know my curses didn't work, but I'm going to give you advice. And his advice is, as we're going to see, we're going that we have to make the Jews sin. Which sin specifically of all the sins that I want you to do? Rashi says, one of the things that irks God the most, that makes God the most upset, is zima, is immorality, right? Prohibited relations. So my advice to you, he says, is get the Jewish men, entice them with your girls, make them go out as prostitutes, and entice the Jewish men and get them to sin, and then God will be angry at the Jews, and the story is going to unfold later on in today's Chumash. But as we'll see, that will be his advice. However, before he goes, Asher Yasa Amazeh, but I will tell you what the Jewish people will do to you. La'amcha, and your nation, what you're going to do to your nation, ba'achris hayamim, at the end of days. So you're now trying to destroy them, but at the end of the game, at the end of days, I'm going to tell you now what is going to be in the end of the story. You want to know the end of the game? I'm going to now prophesy and tell you the end of the story. And we're going to talk about Mashiach here, actually. He's a Mishali, and he takes to his parable as he speaks in ways of parables. Vayomer, and he says, Ne'um Bilam, proclaim, so says Bilam ben Vior, the son of Vior. So says he's talking about himself. Ne'um HaGever, and the proclamation of this man, Shesum Oyun, who speaks with an open eye, like we studied in the previous day's Chumash, that he was either blind, he was missing an eye. We discussed why. But anyway, this is him who's speaking. Ne'um, and he proclaims, Shemeya Imreel, the one who hears the words of God. Yedea das Elyoin, and he knows the thoughts of the Most High. He knows God's thoughts. We said yesterday, we explained the other day, that what does it mean that Bilam knows God's thoughts? We explained one of his key talents was he knew the clock really well, and he knew the exact time when God gets angry. There's 1 millisecond, 1 tiny second a day that Hashem gets angry, and what he knows how to do is how to cast an evil eye and focus on the negative of that person at that moment that God's angry, and cause tremendous havoc and destruction to the person. So that was his talent. So he's like talking about himself in a parable. Machzei Shaddai, he sees the visions of the one who gives enough to everyone, to the world, meaning referring to God. Yechzeh, and he has a vision, and he falls down in the vision, as we described in the other day when we quoted these words, that when he prophesizes, he has to lay down. He falls down, he gets very weak. One of the reasons is because he wasn't circumcised, and it was embarrassing for God to talk to this uncircumcised person, so he would fall down, so as I guess not to be standing uncircumcised, kind of hiding it. And here's what he says, very beautiful praise about the end and the future of the Jewish people. He says, Arenu, these are very famous words. He says, I see it. I see it. V'lo ata, but not now. What does he see? Rashi says, I see that the greatness, the Jewish people, the dignity and the greatness of Yaakov, of the children of Yaakov, which means that, v'lo ata, but not now. So the Jewish people might be downtrodden and so on, but I see in my vision, I see there will be a time, only after a long time will the greatness of the Jewish people become revealed. Ashurenu v'lo karev. I behold it and I see again. I see this greatness that's going to come. I observe it. I could see it in my prophecy, he says. But it's not at a near time. It's going to happen in a long time. What's going to happen? Darach koichav miyakov. A star, a shooting star, will rise from Yaakov. Will be a star that will arise from Yaakov. Now, I saw interesting about why a shooting star. What's the point? I saw fascinating. So simple, Rashi says, where a shooting star is like an arrow being shot. It's being shot. It's going very quickly. And a star, because it's a star, is referred to mazel, referred to our luck. So he's basically saying, I see a shooting star. I see luck of the Jewish people are going to come, but at the end of days, before then, they're going to have a challenging time. But at the end, they're going to have luck. But I see also another thing that one of the commentaries bring. It says very interesting. It says, how the stars are in the sky, but the light takes a long time to get here. So the star already exists, but the light has to reach Earth. Same thing is the vision that he sees of Mashiach. It's already on the way, but it just takes time for it to come to hit Earth. Interesting way of describing it. Anyway, he says, "Umachatz pasei moyav." He says that. Continuing in the verse, so I'm sorry. Darach koichav b'Yaakov, a star will come out of Yaakov. V'kom shevet miYisrael. Hang on 1 second. I want to do 1 second. V'kom shevet miYisrael, and a stick, a root meaning a stick, the staff meaning like strong rulership. Like when you got the staff in your hand, the king has the staff. He's very, very strong dominance. Will come to a tribe of the Jewish people. Which tribe will that be? Which tribe will hold the staff? Which one will be the ruler? And that will be King David. That David HaMelech will become a staff, a very powerful powerhouse among the Jewish people. The King David, who will rule with great strength. Umachatz pasei Moav, and he will slay the leaders of Moab. So Moab is a country that's trying to curse the Jewish people. And Bilam is telling the king of Moab, I see it not now, but at the end of days, there'll be later on in a long time, not in the end of days, referring to King David. In a few hundred years from now, there'll be a man who's King David, and he will rule with an iron fist, with a staff, and he will slay the leaders of Moab. V'karkar kol b'nei ches, and he will penetrate all the children of Shes, kol b'nei Shes, all the children of Shes. Who's Shes? Shes is Seth. Seth is a descendant of what's it called? Of Adam. And Adam, all the world came from him. So what will happen is that the Jewish people will eventually rule the entire world. This leader of the Jewish people will be under the rulership of the Jewish people. Verse 18. This is what the prophet Bilam is saying, is prophesizing to the king of Balak that we have here. Edom Yeresha. And Edom, the Edomites, which is Rome later on, right? The Edomites, Yeresha, will be overrun. I'm going to show you a map in a minute to explain this. Yeresha Seir, and Seir shall become possession of his enemies, and the Jewish people will triumph in the end. So Edom, which is Esav, which is Rome, those two countries will be overrun. We're going to see in a minute a little more details about it, and I'll bring up a map. But Yerd mi Yaakov, and here he's talking about Mashiach. So after you'll have King David, then you'll have later on, you'll have Mashiach, verse 19. The Yerd mi Yaakov, and a ruler who is going to lead, again, very strong, who will lead in great leadership, will come out of Yaakov. And the Hevid Srid Meir, and he will destroy the remnant of the city. Which city are we talking about? And Rashi tells us we're talking about Rome. So again, Rome is the capital of Edom, and we're talking about the end of days when Mashiach will come. And eventually Mashiach will come, and he will destroy the remnant of that city of Rome. And let's move on. Vayar es Amalek, and he looked and he sees Amalek, the Amalekites. And Amalek, the Jews really have a score to settle with Amalek, because Vayisim Shalai, look what he says, and he lifts up his parable as he's looking at the calamities that will happen to Amalek, who have been attacking the Jews. He says the first of the nations to attack the Jews was Amalek. What does that mean? As soon as the Jews left Egypt, they came out of Mitzrayim. The first nation that attacked them was Amalek. Amalek came from Israel. They lived in Israel. They came down and they attacked the Jewish people. So Bilam here is prophesizing and saying, look, you were the first ones with anti-Semitism to attack the Jew. You should know, your end will be everlasting destruction, that the Jewish people will get rid of Amalek. They'll be commanded to destroy Amalek, and they will eventually get rid of Amalek. So they were the first one to attack the Jews. In the end of days, the Jews will be victorious. All the nations that attack them, the Jews will be victorious over them. And then he goes on to say something interesting. Verse 21, Yaris Hakeni, he saw another group of people, another country called the Canaanites, the Cani. And he says, you guys are interesting. Now, who are the Cani? Rashi says, very interesting. The Cani are the people of Yisro, of Jethro. I'm going to share with you an interesting piece of history in a minute about this guy Jethro, but we all know that Yisro is Moshe's father-in-law. So Moshe ran away, if you remember the story, he ran away from Egypt because people wanted to kill him. Eventually, he made his way to the city of the Midian, where actually this Bilam is from, that country, and he married the daughter of a man called Yisro. And then we have the story where Yisro joined the Jewish people, right? He came to the desert with Moshe's wife to meet up with Moses. Anyway, Yisro's children end up becoming part of the Jewish community, and they end up becoming actually rabbis in the Sanhedrin, in the chief court, in the Supreme Court, in the Sanhedrin, the head Jewish court. They joined that thing. Now, the people of Yisro, these descendants of Yisro, the Cani, interestingly lived also near the Amalekites. So the Amalekites hated the Jews, and they were the first nation to hate them. But somehow, within them, near them, lived the descendants of Jethro, of Yisro, and he's continuing to talk about them, and what he's going to say is positive things about them. He's going to say, let's see inside. So he talks about the Canaanites, who he just finished talking about the Amalekites, who started up with the Jews, and their end, the Jews going to destroy them. But then he goes on to talk about the people who lived right next to the Amalekites. They were the Cani, and he raises his parable, and he says, Eisan Moshavecha. He says that your strength, the prime strength, it's very, very strong where you lived. You planted basically your home among the Jewish people because they will go and join the Jewish people. V'sim b'sela kinecha, and they place their nest in the rocks, which means that they're now they've become a very powerful nation that will now live the life of the Jewish people. So I guess Yisro was not originally part of the Jewish people, he wasn't Jewish. And Jethro joined the Jewish people. So he basically moved from being a regular nation of the world to become part of the Jewish people. And he says something very interesting in history here. He says that Yisro was Yisro had a history, and Bilam had a history, which you might not have known if not for this commentary that Rashi brings down. He goes back in history, and he talks about that these people were once together at a meeting. There was a meeting between Yisro, Moshe's future father-in-law, and who else was at the meeting? Pharaoh was at the meeting, King Pharaoh, who was going to make the Jews suffer. And there was a third guy at the meeting, and that was him. He was Bilam. He was part of the meeting. And there was actually a fourth guy at the meeting. This is going to really give us some very interesting context in history here. And the fourth guy at the meeting was a man called Job. It was a meeting, 4 people, King Pharaoh, okay, Job. Who's Job? Job is from the famous book of Job in the Tanakh, where it talks about how Job suffered a lot of suffering, but he still trusted and believed in Hashem. It's one of the books of the 24 books of the written Torah. If you go in the Tanakh, one of them is called Job. So there was a meeting. And by the way, they're not sure when there's a debate about, I believe there's a debate about when Job lived. According to the Talmud, at least this opinion, Job lived at the time when the Jews were slaves in Egypt. So before they were slaves, there was a meeting. Pharaoh was at the meeting, and Pharaoh asked the 3 people there. He had 3 advisors that were there. One of them was this guy Job, who wrote the book of Tanakh. The other guy was Bilam, this terrible anti-Semitic Gentile prophet. And the third guy there was Yisro, who Moses will eventually marry his daughter. And Pharaoh asked them, what do I do about the Jewish problem? The Jews are becoming numerous and too many in my country in Egypt. What do I do about them? And Bilam, this evil prophet, said, let us make them work very hard so they shouldn't have kids. It came up with a terrible plan of anti-Semitism to destroy the Jewish people by making them work very hard. They won't want to have kids. That was Bilam's plan. At that meeting, there were 2 other people there. What did they say? What did Yisro say? And what did Job say? Job was quiet. He didn't say anything. And therefore, Job was punished terribly in his life, and he suffered a lot of calamities. And that's why the story of Job, when you see in the book of Tanakh, he suffers a lot. That's the reason why, because he heard Bilam tell Pharaoh how to get rid of the Jews and make them suffer, and he didn't say anything. And that's why the book of Tanakh, there goes in that he suffered. And Yisro had to run away for his life. I guess he didn't agree, and therefore he had to run away from his life. He ran away from Egypt from being a advisor to Pharaoh, and Moses ends up marrying, interestingly, his daughter, Zipporah. Now, this is what Bilam is saying here in the prophecy. Bilam is saying, you, Yisro, you people, the Kenites who come from Yisro, from Jethro, he says, you guys, how did you end up becoming part of the Jewish people? Years ago, we were at a meeting with Pharaoh trying to destroy the Jewish people, and you were there, your great-grandfather, Yisro, was with us. How did you end up becoming actually part of the Jewish people? Very interesting. That's what he's pointing out here. He says, Eison Moshavecha, your firm is your dwelling place, and you set your nest on a cliff, meaning you place yourself among the Jewish people, and used to be in the olden days, you were part of the advisors to Pharaoh, who was there at that meeting that I told Pharaoh that we should get rid of the Jewish people. So we see history is kind of, the effects and the outcome of those advice. And here we have Bilam, who was the original advisor trying to destroy the Jews already back then, is back at it here, was trying to curse them again. Verse 22, commentaries say, obviously, they must have been very old. Must have been about 170 years old if you were there to make it, I guess, or even older, whatever, giving advice to Pharaoh to get rid of the Jewish people. Oh, and now he's here many years later trying to curse them. Verse 22, and there's a discussion about that in the Talmud, how old he was, but we're not going to get into all that now. Verse 22, and he then said, sorry, 1 second. Levoyer Koyin, for even if Kayin, meaning these people, the Kani, this Yisro's descendants, even if they'll be expelled, even if Koyin will be expelled, the descendants of Yisro, which means they're going to suffer with the Jewish people in exile, Adma Ashur Tishbeka, how far will Assyria take you? So I have to give you another point in history, and I'm going to bring out my map to explain you this point in history. Who's with me over here? Anybody with me? You guys following the history of the Jewish people? Fascinating story of Job and so on. Very interesting part of history. So here's our map for today. I want you to look at the bottom of the map to the left. Here, someone needs to mute their phone. I'm not sure who it is. I can help you mute it. Ira, no problem. The bottom of the map, you'll notice, has a map of Israel. So we have Judah and Israel. Okay. Very interesting piece of history. For those who don't know it, I'll just share with you quickly. there's going to be a war after King Solomon, a split between the northern tribes of Israel and the southern tribes of Israel. Okay, the northern tribes of Israel will become more idolatrous and worse than the northern tribes will be worse than the southern tribes. So first of all, they're going to have a fight, and they're going to split up, and Jerusalem is going to stay in the southern tribes of Yehuda, and that will cause the southern tribes to stay holier, more connected to the Torah than the northern tribes. And the northern tribes will get, the southern tribes eventually will also get caught up in idol worship, but the northern tribes will be much worse. And there'll be much worse idolatry. Because of that, Hashem will chase out the northern tribes 100 years earlier before the southern tribes. Okay, so kings will come, Sancheriv, and we're going to see about the country here, will from Ashur. The Ashurite kingdom will come and chase out the Jewish people, but they will 100 years earlier will the northern tribes be chased out for sinning 100 years before the southern tribes. Who will be the one to chase them out? That will be Assyria, Ashur in Hebrew. Okay. Another thing we always talk about is the Euphrates River. Okay, we talk about the Euphrates River. We talk about Assyria. Later on, the tribes of Judah will also be chased out over the Euphrates River, and that's where they will sing the songs. We quoted in Tehillim. Can they sing? They'll try to make the Levites sing. But anyway, Assyria will first come 100 years earlier, will travel all the way down and chase out the northern tribes and lead them all the way back to Assyria. I just to share with you, this leads to a very interesting part of history, is what happened to those 10 tribes. That's why people are looking for the 10 tribes, because the 10 tribes left were chased out of Israel 100 years before. So most of Judaism, as we know, history will go later on when the Beis Hamikdash will be destroyed 100 years later. The first temple will be destroyed. Then the Jews will be chased out by the Babylonians, and we'll have the story of Purim and so on. And there's a big question, a lot of history. What happened to those 10 tribes? Did they ever come back? I gave a class on that one time a long time ago. But they'll be chased out by Ashur, by Assyria. Now going back to, let me show you one more picture before I leave the map. And then I'll get back to this point of history here in a minute. I guess he's just trying to show you that Rome will basically take over most of the world at that time when Rome will take out. But whatever, that's not, so let's go back to the Chumash and we'll see this inside connected to the history. Okay. So this is what he's telling the descendants of Jethro, of Yisro, who were taken, who joined the Jewish people. So he's like, you guys placed your nests among the rocks, among the Jewish people, and you will have leaders in the Sanhedrin and the heads, though you will suffer a little bit with the Jews when they suffer. Here it is in verse 22. Because if you'll be expelled, the people of Kayin, the descendants of Yisro will be expelled. Adma, how far will they go? Till Ashur, till Assyria. And that time when the 10 tribes will be expelled, that you will go with them. Tishbecha, will you be taken captives? So it's only for a limited point in time. However, when Mashiach will come, you will eventually come back. Rashi also brings here that the king of Assyria, what did he do to the Jews? He made them move from place to place and switched up the countries and mixed all the nations up and so on. And you will be part of that confusion and craziness. However, you will at the end of time end up coming back with the Jewish people. You're part of the Jewish people. Verse 23. And as he's talking about the end of times and the destruction and the challengings that will take place, the exile the Jewish people will be in, he starts talking a little bit about that. Isa Mishali raises his parable, and he says, Mi yichya, who can live, who can survive, Yisumay El, when God makes these things happen. When what will happen is when this man, his name is Sancheriv, who is from the country of Assyria, from Ashur, he will come and he will destroy the Jews and chase them out of Israel. And one of the things he will do, he will mix up all the nations of the world and not leave any country in its country. So we don't really know. When people live now, they're not the original inhabitants of that original country, because he went and he mixed up the whole world. And what will happen is that the Romans will then fight a war against the Assyrians and will take them over. Let's see. In the next verses, he's predicting history, what's going to take place. But Sim biyad kitim. Sim are ships, large battleships will come from Kitim. Kitim is Rome. They refer to the Rome. Be'inu es Ashur, and then they will attack and they will afflict the Assyrians who originally afflicted the Jewish people. Be'inu Aver, and they will afflict the other side. I believe Rashi says the other side of the river. They asked the river that they crossed. The Gam hu adiyad, but he too, Rome too, eventually will perish forever. So they're going to come with their large boats, and Rome will attack the Assyrians, and eventually that nation will be attacked. Rashi brings here, by the way, if you want to see more on this, it's very interesting. In the book of Daniel, he talks there about the same similar dream that the king has, and that one country, it was all predicted, the exiles that the Jews will be in was already predicted at the destruction of the first Beis Hamikdash. Even here, we're talking Bilam describing the Assyrians and Rome and everything that will take place. He's already describing this way before it happened. We're talking about in the desert, even before the first Beis Hamikdash was built, describing what's going to take place. Very interesting. Verse 25. Vayakam Bilam. So Bilam got up after his fourth prophecy, 3 times trying to curse him. This time it wasn't related to a curse. He's just telling King Balak what will happen. Yashav l'mekaymai, and he returned to his place. He went back, I guess, to Midian. Begam Balak, halach l'darkai, and King Balak returned back to his palace, and that's it. They finished with their thing of cursing the Jewish people. However, it's not over. Yeshiv Yisrael b'Shittim. The Jewish people were living in a city called Shittim. I'll show you that on the map too, just so we have that on the map. So we had that the other day. And this is the Assyrians chasing the Jews out. Here is a place called Shittim. If you look in the middle of the map, you see again the Arnon River is where the Moabites lived. They were the ones who tried to curse the Jewish people. He was taking them along the border on some mountains here in order to look at the Jewish people and curse them. And different areas here. And here is a city right in the middle called Shittim with that dot there. And that is where the Jewish people are living. And that's where the next story takes place. Let's go to the Chumash. Vayeshev Yisrael b'Shittim, verse 1, the Jewish people were dwelling in a place called Shittim. And the people started to commit a harlotry, started to commit these immoral things with who? Liznois, to harlotry in Bnois Moav, with the daughters of the Moabites. So, interesting story. So Rashi says, what's the connection? And he says, well, that exactly was the advice of Bilam. Bilam says, I couldn't succeed in hurting the Jews with cursing them. So instead of cursing them, we're going to make them sin. And as I said in that Rashi, what is the greatest sin that Hashem dislikes? Hashem dislikes harlotry and prohibited relations that Hashem does not allow. So that is not allowed. By Tikrana, and a very interesting plan Bilam had. He was very sophisticated in the sin that he wanted to do. And here Rashi describes to us a fascinating way of enticing the Jews to sin. Rashi tells us that when the women would entice the men, and even like the king, we'll see, they sent a princess, we'll see in the next parsha, the women would entice the men and try to get them to sin. And when the man would be very, very excited, the woman would pull out an idol worship from in her clothes, from her bosom, and she would say to him, submit to me. He said to her, submit to me, basically, let's have intimacy. She would really entice him. And she would say, fine, pull out the idol called Peor, and she would tell him, bow to him, and then we will do the act. So on top of harlotry, they're also getting the Jews to sin with idol worship. And we know what happened when the Jews sinned with the golden calf. So there's a whole devious plan that's planned here by Bilam in order to get the Jews to sin. And this is actually, unfortunately, working out this time. So that's verse 2. Vatikrena la'am. They invited people as if Elihehen to bring sacrifices to their gods. And the nation ate and they prostrated themselves to their gods. And these people, the nation of Moab, with their devious plan, were very successful. Terrible story is taking place. And the Jewish people became attached. They became attached to the idol of Peor. They embraced it. They embraced this idol. They became very close to it. It became a major problem. Now, Rashi actually tells us what was the way of idol worship to this idol. Very weird way. It's in the laws of Maimonides, because we're actually learning about the laws of Avodah Zarah, of idol worship right now. They used to take off their clothes and show their private parts to the idol, bare their selves, their backside, and they would go to the bathroom. Actually, they would relieve themselves from their backside in front of the idol, and that was the method of service of this idol. And that is what the Jewish people became accustomed to. Now, just to bring it up, because we're learning literally learned it yesterday in the laws, that there's two prohibitions of idol worship. One is you're not allowed to serve an idol with any of the main four ways of serving Hashem, right? What are the ways of bowing? You're not allowed to bow to idol. Doesn't matter what the method of service is. But what happens if you have a weird idol that you're supposed to go to the bathroom in front of? If that's the way it's served, and you serve it, it's considered like you served idols, and therefore it's also prohibited. So the Jewish people are now are attached through this whole cunning plan with enticing the men and getting the women involved and so on. Hashem, Yisrael, and God got very angry at the Jewish people. And Rashi says Hashem sent a plague. See soon, as people start dropping dead, people start dying from the plague, because we know what happens when people start serving idols. And also there's harlotry going on. Yomer Hashem el Moshe, and Hashem says to Moshe, what are we going to do? We have to stop this. Get all the leaders of the Jewish people, get them together. We're going to make judges. We're going to make a judgment. Whoever serves idols, we know it's capital punishment. So we have to get together all the leaders of the Jewish people, and we know, remember there was a hierarchy system. Every 10 Jews had one leader, and every 100 Jews had another leader. The number of leaders that there were, by the way, were 78,000. If you count all the people from the highest judges to the lowest, smallest judges, over 10 people, there was a total of 78,000 people. So he says, Hashem tells Moshe, take 78,000 people, take all the leaders of the Jewish people, Behukah, and hang the people who serve the idols. Basically, what's going to happen is if you don't do judgment, what happens? You're not doing kindness, you're cruel, because people are dropping dead from the plague. And the plague's not stopping unless punishment is meted out to the people who serve the idols. So what's the punishment for serving idols? Is that they get stoned, and so on. And once they're stoned, you hang them till night. You hang them up. So hukam, so quickly do this, I guess maybe, so there'll be punishment. People will stop serving the idol. Hukah oisam, and hang them. LaHashem, to oisam LaHashem, to God. Neged Hashemesh, in front of the sun. What does that mean, hang them to the sun, in front of the sun? So the simple meaning is that it means that so everybody could see. And I'm just saying maybe the idea here is so no one else will sin. But another meaning here is in front of the sun, meaning that when whoever was hung and served the idols, the clouds, actually, maybe before they were hung, the clouds moved aside and shone on the idolaters. So you knew who was the idolaters. By a miracle is that this cloud would like move to the side where the idolaters were, and the sun would shine on him, pointing out who are the people that serve the idol. And then Vayashav Charein Hashem Yisrael, and then God's wrath, flaring anger, will be removed from the Jewish people. Will save them before everyone starts dying in a plague. So Vayomer Moshe, so Moshe goes El Shofte Yisrael, to the judges of the Jews, and he says, Hirgu Ish Anoshav, and it's go and kill the men who became attached to this poor idol. And Rashi says there were 78,000 leaders, and Moshe is telling them each the amount, how many people you want to know sinned to the Pa'ar. Each judge had to kill 2 people. There were 2 people that each judge had to kill, and since there were 78,000 judges, Rashi makes the calculation here with the commentaries I saw, is that there was 157,200 people. So it was a huge amount of Jewish people that were getting enticed, could imagine what's going on over there, They did a real job on them, these Moabite women, the Moabite country, in convincing the Jews to sin. And now they're all going after idolatry. And it's a terrible disaster, and the Jewish people are dying as the plague is hitting them. And here comes a very famous and interesting story. It needs a lot of commentary, but I'll try to explain to you at least what happened. Let me just read to you what Rashi says. The 78,000 leaders go out and they start giving capital punishment to whoever needed to get it, and many people started getting killed. So the people of the tribe of Shimon went over to their leader, whose name was Zimri, and they said, Zimri, do something about it. You're our leader, and many people in our tribe are getting killed. So Rashi tells us what happens next is Zimri says, so they call this Zimri and they say, what are you doing? Why are you sitting there, our leader? So many of our tribe of Shimon are getting killed. Maybe a lot of the people that serve the power were from them tribe. Let's see verse 6. Hine ish min bnei Yisrael. There was a man from the Jewish people, and whose name was Zimri, was this leader. So after his constituents came to him and said, do something about it, we're all getting killed because there's many of us who served the poor idol, and now we're getting capital punishment. And he goes, and in front of everybody, he brought a Midianite girl. So he's going to himself do the act, do the sin. And he goes and he brings a Midianite girl. And who was the girl that he brings? Her name was Cosby. Cosby, the daughter of Tsur. She was actually, I think, a princess of the people. But the Midianites were so hated to the Jews that they made their daughters go out to become prostitutes just in order to entice the Jewish people. And what he does is he takes this girl, this Midianite girl, and he goes over to Moshe and he says, Moshe, can I have intimacy with her? And Moshe says, you're not allowed to. The Torah says you're not allowed to marry. You only could marry a Jewish woman. So he says, and if Moshe will say she's not allowed, he'll tell Moshe, very interesting, Moses, what about you? This girl is a Midianite, actually. She wasn't even a Moabite. She was a Midianite. Now he's going to put Moshe in the corner because Moshe, who did you marry? You married Tzipporah. Where's Tzipporah from? Tzipporah is from the Midianite country. So why am I any worse than you? Right? Who allowed you to marry a Midianite girl, and why can't I marry a Midianite girl and you are allowed to marry a Midianite girl? Very interesting. So I just want to share the answer, obviously, is that the Jews were not a nation before the Torah was given. When Moses married Tzipporah, she didn't have to go through conversion or so on in order to get married, because when the Torah was given, all the Jewish people, including the Midianite women that were married to the Jewish people and everyone else, went through conversion at Mount Sinai. So it wasn't an issue. But here is the leader of a tribe, the leader of Shimon, standing up for his constituents, going to do the act specifically and deliberately to go against Moses. This is a disaster that's taking place. So, and he's doing it because his constituents are coming to him and saying they're killing our people because they're giving them capital punishment. So he says like this, and he went in the front of the eyes of Moshe, did it publicly, in front of the eyes of the Jewish people, and he went and he brought this woman to his tent, and he's going to have intimacy. He asked Moses, and he's putting down Moses, and he's taking this harlot to his tent to have intimacy with her, and so on. And they start to cry and weep by the door of the tent. Who's crying? Moses. And everybody's crying. It's a disaster taking place. I guess no one knows what to do. And here Moses is being attacked for what he said, and he doesn't know what to do. And they're crying. And Rashi says, well, why are they crying? I mean, what's with Moses? What happened? He doesn't know the answer to the question, what should be done? Moses knows the answer to the question. Even Moses, when Moses was very powerful by the golden calf, when there's so many Jews there, and he stood up against everyone and he said what to do. Why is he all of a sudden like coming weak over here? Why does he know what to do? And Rashi says it was all a plan from Hashem, because Hashem wanted that a new person called Pinchas, who is the grandson of Aaron. Pinchas is, so Elazar was the Kohen who served under his father Aaron, and Elazar had a son Pinchas who was a grandson, and he wants Pinchas to get the reward for sticking up for what happened. So when someone does something like this, that deliberately goes and sins in front of everybody, not in front of everybody's faces, the rule is that you don't get normally for this kind of act, not talking about idolatry, just the harlotry that's going on, you don't get capital punishment in law of court. But if it's during the act and someone's doing it in front of everybody's face and so on, then the person who sees it happen is supposed to do himself capital punishment on the person, kind of like take the law into his own hands. If they feel passion to protect Hashem's law, that's what should be done. So Vayar Pinchas, so he goes over to Moshe and he says, Moshe, didn't you teach us? Because Moses, remember when he came to teach the Torah, he first taught Aaron and he first taught Aaron's children. And he says, Moses, I remember in class hearing from you that if the act is being done in front of people and they see it going, they should take capital punishment into their own hand. And Moses says, you're right, and you're the one who feels passionately about it. Go ahead, you do it. That's the answer to the question. And meanwhile, don't forget, there's a plague raging among the people for what's going on. And here he's being challenged by the leader of the tribe of Shimon. Vayar Pinchas men Elazar ben Aaron HaKohen, and Pinchas, the son of Elazar, the son of Aaron HaKohen. He got up from among the Jewish people. And he took a spear in his hands. And he goes, Vayavei Achar Ish Yisrael, and he went into the chamber, El Hakuba, into the tent. He goes in after the head of the tribe of Shimon goes into the tent with his harlot. He goes in, he takes the spear, Yidkar Shneim, and he spears both of them. And Rashi says he goes through the genital part, because you're only allowed to do this at the time of the act when they're having intimacy. Only at that moment is when you could take the law into your own hands, and it's proved to everybody that this guy was doing what he said he would do, because that's the way they were killed. So everybody saw. As Ish Yisrael, as Isha, through the man, as Isha, the woman, El Kubasa, through their private parts, the Yatzer Megefa, and the plague stopped from among the Jewish people at that moment that it happened, Yal Bnei Yisrael, from the Jewish people. So in a sense, it was a tough act on Pinchas's part, but Pinchas saved the Jewish people because it would have kept on dying. And how many people ended up dying in the plague? People who died in the plague are above Esrim Allah for 24,000 people that end up dying in the plague. So unfortunately, he was successful. Bilam was successful. He could not figure out how to curse the Jewish people with his words, but getting them to sin did the job that he wanted to happen. Any questions or comments